Hey everyone, Norm from Tested here, and I thought it'd be fun to wrap up this week with a bit of a show and tell as well as a demonstration and talking about some of my favorite photography gear that I use at home, primarily for photographing my collectibles, my miniatures, and my sixth scale figures. So over the course of this lockdown, I've been redoing my home office and studio, putting up some better organization for storage, for display, as well as decking out my kind of workspace here. I work on basically a round table, which I have my laptop, or I do product photography and collectibles photography. It's not a formal studio, but I'm making do with the space I have, as well as the gear that I can get to fit in this space. So we're going to talk a little bit about lighting and my favorite products I've been using recently, the way I've been mounting that lighting for photography, as well as doing a little bit of a demonstration. We're going to photograph this figure, one of my favorites to photograph recently. This is War Machine Mark 6 from Avengers Endgame, made by Hot Toys. You can get it at Sideshow Collectibles, and I just love this depiction of Rhodey. It's Don Cheadle, of course. Wonderful likeness. It's die cuts. It's heavy duty, incredibly posable, as you can see, and so I'm going to have fun photographing that for you. But let's start with the lights. So, if you've watched our videos, you know that Adam built, for example, he had his lighting system for his workbench, and he uses LED lights. So this is something you can buy online, really affordable. It's like $30 to $40. It's bi-color, so you can have change color temperature, warm or cold. You can change the intensity, and it plugs in very simply and mountable. So you got your standard quarter 20 port on the bottom. And Adam has it mounted on his Lockline gooseneck system, wired through, which works great for his workbench. But here, the brightness is a little bit overkill for me because a little bit does go a long way with small scale photography, and I don't really want a big floodlight like this. I mean, it can work well as a key light, but I'm placing it a little further away. And also, when you're spending that much money on a light, you do get some of the byproducts of a cheaper LED system. So there's only so much you can change in terms of the luminosity. You do get it. It's not very balanced in terms of the color temperature as you change from warm to cold. And if you take photographs, sometimes you do get that telltale kind of green tinting, which of course you can fix in post if you shoot with RAW. But this ends up not being my light of choice at home. Something I was clued into last year and ends up being one of my go-tos are these Lume Cubes. So Sergeant Bananas clued me into this, and these are wonderful, really high power LED lights that also have a wonderful range of accessories. And all the lights I'm talking about today also run off of battery power, in addition to also being workable if you want to plug it in. So that's, again, adds a little bit of versatility. And what I love about this is it gets extremely bright. So for the type of photography I like doing, because I don't have a proper studio setup, what I end up doing is this kind of low-key style where I underexpose my photos and I use really bright lights. And so the background kind of fades, hopefully, into darkness, kind of blurs together. And so I really want some high focus, bright light, and then expose lower so the figure or the subject still looks good, and I can have very targeted lights. And so when you have accessories that, like these barn doors or a mini snoot, basically it becomes, like a mini photo studio or a film studio, which kind of makes sense because I'm shooting miniatures. So very happy with these. Not extremely cheap, but really, really powerful. Accompanying those, recently I've been using these Aputure LED lights. Joey has been a fan of this company, and he uses some of their lights for our location shoots. He's talked about them in his behind-the-scenes production videos. And this MX light, again, runs off of battery, also bi-color, gets extremely bright. I'm not properly exposed for it right now, but let's turn it on, and you can see, yeah, this is really bright, and I believe that's the dimmest it goes, which is still good, but if I want to boost it up, very bright, and even goes even brighter. There's a a 30% boost button. It goes from warm to cold and very balanced, and it looks right in under the camera lens. And battery life for this, unfortunately, about an hour at max brightness, and I tend to do use it at max brightness. So you do have to kind of plug it in. There's a USB-C port that I leave plugged in when I'm not using it to keep it charged. It doesn't get super warm, which is something the Lume Cubes do. They do get very, very hot almost to the touch when you use them at full brightness. There's a big heat sink here, which keeps us relatively cool. Very versatile in studio, in a home office like this, but also we've used this on location as well. It does get lost if you're using big production lights, or it doesn't read, of course, in daylight in the bright sky, but in studio, very powerful, very versatile. Also from Aputure, I recently got these in. These are the MCs. So form factor wise, look very similar to the MXs. No heatsink in the back, but they do magnetic charging, inductive charging with a carrying case they have. And the big difference also is that these are RGBW. So you can change color temperature on these and also color on these. There's a tiny LCD screen here where you can adjust some of the settings and a jog dial on the side to do that. But primarily, I've been using this with an accompanying app for phone or tablet. The iPad app is my favorite so far, although there is an upcharge. You have to pay for that app. But with that app, if you have these MCs, they connect over Bluetooth. You can connect a ton of them to the iPad and then group them, create presets, and then have all sorts of adjustment where we can, for example, not only adjust the brightness and color temperature if you want to go warm or cold, but also a variety of colors as well. I'm going to turn down the brightness just a little bit, but yeah, variety of colors as well as effects. So very useful if you're using this as a fill light. You can do things like, for example, police sirens or a campfire. You get a little bit warm. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, it's kind of pulsating with warm light, which is neat. They don't get as bright as the MXs, and so primarily I've been using them as fill lights, kind of placing them around the room, around my subjects, and giving it a little bit of color, experimenting with that, because that's not something had been doing a lot in the past with. And then in terms of placing these lights around the subjects, around my little set here, I've been on this quest to find a good way to do so. I mentioned Adam has his lock line system, his gooseneck system, where he wires his LED panels through, and they work. They're adjustable, but if you've seen any of our videos, you might have seen him actually adjust them in camera because they do tend to droop. They don't hold their position as well as I would like. They're great for kind of moving in big movements, but not if you want really pinpoint precision. And so I've looked at things like you can get tiny tripods. This is like $10 you can find online. They sit on your desk, and you put a little ball head on top, then yeah, you can very easily place them around and then move your light, but then you don't have a lot of like vertical adjustability. It doesn't work if you want to have a light come down from the top, for example, a big key light just kind of flooding the top of your scene. And so I looked in different types of clamps and ways I can attach a light to an arm. And there are these kind of spring boom arm systems. I actually used one for mounting a phone camera for an overhead shot for this desk, and I can mount a light on that. And that's pretty good as well. They're fairly stable. They don't bounce a lot. But again, the range of movement for the light is also a little bit limiting. The range of movement is increased if you go with one of these type of wire mounts that you can use for phone clamps, and you clamp the other side to your desk. And I don't like these at all. I think they don't hold their position. You really have to fight against them to get whatever you want into a position, and they're really kind of a last resort for me. What I ended up using though was this system, they're in frame this whole time, is a combination of two different mounts. We'll start at what's connected to the table. So clamped to a table is this 31-inch, it's split into three sections, arm that is designed for mounting webcams and small objects. And yeah, you can put like a GoPro on it, not really for your DSLRs. A point and shoot, I think, would fit on this just fine. But what I like about this system is that it's rigid, it's locked in place. And there are 2 points that you can adjust, as well as the rotation along the clamp. But you can see here, if I loosen this up, this arm has the ability to go pretty freely. And if I loosen a second axis up, then I can really kind of bend it wherever I want. Get real high up or extend it far out. And it's pretty versatile that way. And then once I have kind of the first stage of positioning, then I tighten those up and they stay locked in place. They're actually teeth that interlock at these hinges here. So really rigid. Now, that doesn't get me exactly where I want the light to be, and it's not something I wanted to kind of adjust for every shot. So on top of that, on this quarter 20, I've mounted this small mini magic arm, and this has been wonderful. They sell these, I think small arm makes one, but you can get it again online for about $10, $15, not expensive at all. And you can use them, people have mounted them on top of your cold shoe ports for mounting like a monitor or lights. And the reason I'm combining these systems is because there's mini small arm, which is wonderful. It's a 1 point of adjustment, 2 ball heads that I can really position this anywhere I want. It only is about 9 or 10 inches. So I wish there was a system where the small arm could be clamped to the table and that's all I need, like 1 point to adjust this light to wherever I want it to go. But because it only is about 10 inches, I have to combine it with this other system, but it works out really well. So if I want to get low, I can do that. If I want to aim this light for basically any angle, I basically have 6 degrees of freedom of movement for positioning it. And then once I get it to exactly where I want to be, let's say right here, then I just tighten this one knob up and it's locked into place. Pretty nice. I've been using it on both sides of the table here, so I actually have it here as well with the Aputure MX as my overhead. And yeah, it's exactly what I was looking for, short of having, you know, kind of a mini C-stand that I could put on the table and place the light. It gets me to a place where I can have a key light, a fill light, a catch light, placed anywhere I want around a subject, and I can get to taking the photos I want. So let's go take some photos. I'm gonna clear off this table. We're gonna set up War Machine here. I'm gonna again go with kind of a low-key style where I want him to be shrouded around in the darkness. Try different poses. We'll start off with like a standard museum pose and then head off into Lightroom where I'll walk you through my thought process into taking these pictures. All right, so you can see I'm already adjusting my lights here. I'm using 2 primary lights to start, just to show you how effective you can get a shot just with 2 lights. I love, for this type of photography, just using 1 big overhead key light. So I have the Aputure MX mounted on top, and because this War Machine figure has nice reflective silver surfaces, especially his faceplate, that's gonna work really well for that being mounted there. So just doing a very standard, what's called a museum pose, arms to the side. Even then, I don't want to look too stiff, so I'm bending his knees a little bit, having his arms out. You have interchangeable hands, so I have that him kind of like in this tense pose, doing a couple test shots before, just to make sure I have my framing and stuff right. And then I have my my catch light to make sure I get that glint in his eye, which is what I really want. And so the Lume Cube there, adjusting the barn doors and making sure that I can catch that reflectivity in his eye, around his mask, but creating still some hard shadows around him. And while it looks bright here, you can see that once I expose it, it actually looks pretty subdued. And these are the museum poses. So once I'm happy with that, I'm going to keep this lighting setup. Again, just 2 lights, one big overhead and then one catch light aimed at the face, and then try a couple different poses. My #1 recommendation for people who want to get into this type of photography is take a ton of photos. So get a pose where you feel like you like what you see, and then go take 20, 30, 40, 50 photos in that pose, because by the end of that session, you're gonna find something that you didn't know you liked from the beginning of that session, whether it's a different angle, a different focal length, a different pose that you might wanna go with. And so, while these are both still kind of static museum poses, I like this looking off into the distance, especially with that shoulder cannon pointed off. I think I like that a lot more. And then adjusting it, again, making sure, maybe I'll adjust that catch light so I catch both his eyes as opposed to just one eye. Again, focusing right on his face right there, a little bit of warm light there, while the key light is pretty cold. And that's my museum pose. And here are the photos that I ended up with really liking. So from here, let's go with a more dynamic pose, and reposing it, always a lot of fun with the 6-scale Hot Toys figures. So War Machine comes with a flight stand, so you can be elevated pretty securely. So I'm gonna go with maybe an action pose, change the hands out, get him to more of a ready to fire his repulsor blasters. I don't have the batteries installed right here because the way I'm lighting this figure, all the internal lighting will get lost. So I'm going to try to compensate for that with a little bit of fill light and creating some color with the Aputure MCs. You can see I'm using the app, the iPad app, to tweak my lighting profiles just to see what might work. I have 2 fill lights, one on the left side, one on the right side. The one on the left is kind of low, and so it's kind of coming upward. So you can see it's catching right on his hands, a little bit on his face, as well as on the chest plate, and then doing a little bit of reposing. But I think that's going to really help give this figure some life and some action, a little bit of that red glow. So that's the pose I'm liking. Again, take a ton of pictures of the pose, different angles, kind of get up close, move further out, try to help it fill the frame a little bit, and then, delete as you go, review the pictures as you go so you know what you like. And by the end of the session, you probably will come out with something that you like. So let's take a look at these finished photos. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this photography session. I have links to all the gear I mentioned in the descriptions below, but let me know what gear you like using, what lights you use, what kind of mounting systems you use for your studio setups. I'd love to know. Please post them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.